Well, about 6 years ago, I was actually doing some training about coaching, and during that training, I was challenged with the quote that 2% of people think, 3% of people think they think, and 95% of people would rather die than think, and that just really stirred up in me. Where do I sit in that sort of parameter? And so I started looking into it from that point of view, personal development point of view, and that's where I started looking into the whole issue of how our brains are wired, what we do with the learning that we've got, all of those sort of things. So I suppose that's where the genesis of the whole thought started for me.
Something that's not usually addressed until university or maybe towards the end of high school. What have you found since you started looking at thinking critically and originally?
Look, a lot of it, as I said, was built around my own personal challenge. But as a business coach, I do a lot of work with business owners who are wanting to grow their businesses. And the first thing they always reach for is the profit and loss statements or the sales figures. And that to me is it's not about thinking originally. It's about looking backwards at what we've done in the past. And while we can learn from history, it doesn't open up that application for actual critical thinking. It's just about reflection. And so I've started trying to challenge my own clients with this whole thought. What are you doing to think originally around your business? And so I suppose that's where I'm pushing at the moment, so much so that I'm even challenging myself to write a book which touches on this as a concept. It uses an analogy of a sailing ship and says, this is not dissimilar to driving your own business. So I'm sort of playing around with those concepts at the moment, and that's my current sort of original thinking.
And so what's the difference between original thoughts and just regurgitating information?
Well, I think that the best way to explain that is to use an example. And the best one is, people who know how to drive a motor vehicle. I don't know about you, I don't know about your listeners, but I've certainly driven from work to home and pulled into the driveway and thought, how did I get here? And I think that's something that a lot of people associate with. And what that is we are taught how to drive a car. We're taught how to react. And if the journey generally is not one that requires thinking to occur, we just carry it out as an automated process. And so we literally are running on autopilot. And I suppose my challenge is how do we put those things aside? Not get rid of them, because I think autopilot is necessary, but how do we actually get our brains to actually start processing and thinking? And that's the current sort of space that I'm in, the current space that I'm trying to put my clients into is think more about your potential rather than your performance.
And it's something we all do every day. I'm sure a lot of people don't actually take the time to focus on the actual act of thinking itself. But what are the keys that you've found so far to get out of autopilot?
Well, look, for me, and I think it's different for everybody, but for me, I try to take half an hour a day, usually in the morning after the house is quiet, everyone's gone, I work from home, and I try to take half an hour where I sit. I have a pen and paper sitting with me, and any sort of process thoughts that come in, like, I've got to remember to do that and send that email, make that phone, I write those down straight away and get them out of my head. But I'm trying to give myself that half hour of time to actually think. I find it helps me if I've got something to focus on, and the ship analogy is a great example. I've actually got a model of a sailing ship in my lounge room. It's about a 4-foot sized model, so it's fairly large. But I sit, I just focus on that, and I allow the creative thoughts to come. I've got one client at the moment who says, I'm not creative. And I'm sorry, but I argue with that. I think every single one of us is creative. We just need to learn how to tap into that creativity. I actually think that we can, if people take this on as a challenge for 30 days, I think there's a massive potential to change where you're going in your life and what you're doing in your life. And that goes for your business as well. Just trying to set aside that time where you're doing uninterrupted, I want to think and create something new. I think that's a really important aspect to actually moving forward. So, for me, it came down to that decision. Do I want to be in the 2%, the 3%, or the 95%? And I chose I want to be in the 2%.